Hey everyone, welcome to Dave's Bonsai. On today's episode, back to working on some of my trees. Welcome in everyone to the Passive Solar Green Frame, and we are going to work slightly on the windswept Chinese elm that I acquired from our friend Candice. I have to say, I just watched for the second or third time the entire interview of Chris Baker when I was out at the Chicago Botanical Gardens. Those two videos, if you haven't checked them out yet, I'm just going to recommend them because there's such great knowledge, especially the second one with Chris. The first one is just me goofing around and showing you some really cool trees. The second one, part two, Chris Baker, he drops a lot of amazing information. I really like his talk about natural style versus the traditional style. And one of the biggest tips I got from this road trip from him, and I don't know that I've heard this before, but it was reiterated and put back in my brain. If your trees are looking a little pale in the full sun, we'll put them in the shade. He had his shade trees and his sun trees, and they swap them out every once in a while. And he showed me right there. I could just, it wasn't showing up on camera as much, but the trees that were in the shade were already getting darker days after he put them in the shade. So just that stress of so much sun, think of some shade cloth. Think of getting your trees out of that sun, like in his sun area from 8:30 to 8:30. That's a lot of sun. So what a great tip. Thanks to Chris and Dan and Angelica. It was really a fun time. We laughed a lot and a lot of good knowledge. So go check out the Botanical Part 2 over in Chicago. And if you can get there, I just had a viewer comment on the video and saying, gosh, if I can get there, I'm going to go. Absolutely. Get to the Chicago Botanical Gardens. Spend an entire day there because you can spend an hour or two just at the bonsai. Now, you won't get the back behind the scenes images that I got, but you'll see the courtyard in great display. So let's get to some action today. And this is going to be the Chinese elm. Now, incidentally, I might have an interruption during part of this because the ash tree in the backyard is going down today by professionals. Yeah, we're just going to pay the money, a little peace of mind, and we're just going to get it done so it's done. So we're going to do that today, but they haven't shown up yet, so I decided let's start recording because, you know, as soon as I start working on this tree, there's going to be some, well, either my wife will say, hey, Dave, they're here, or they're going to walk down the backyard and look at the tree. So we're going to work on this tree. Now, here's the challenge on working with the Chinese elm windswept. I talked in my last episode when I worked on this tree and trimmed it up earlier in the year that I might want to raise this up just a little bit in the next planting. And I plan to repot this in the spring. Again, a new tree to me. It's been growing all this year. I don't think she repotted it last year because it was in the September bonsai show over at the Minnesota State Fair. So she might have repotted it in the spring before that, but then this next spring will be 2 full years, maybe 3. And so I'm going to go ahead and repot it. So if I'm going to repot it and I change the angle ever so slightly, what I do today could have big ramifications for the future, and it might be oopses. So why am I going to retrim it today then anyway? Well, I got to bring it back down a little bit, and I might even wire it just a little bit to get the momentum over there in windswept. But I want to do it now so I can fit it in my cold frame. I mean, I have so many trees, and I have client trees now, and I just can't have this taking up so much space. And you can see, look at this branch back here, everybody. This is a new branch this year. This is almost a half of a pencil. It's almost my skinny chopstick. It is almost like my chopstick. In just a year of growth, this is a tree unto itself. So it comes up, as we look at the tree this way, it comes up over here and then it went up here. Now I did angle this towards the sun, so everything in general is growing that way. So we're going to go ahead and make a couple cuts here that are obvious. Then we'll make some cuts to shorten it a little bit, and I might even just wire a little bit. I was at a Minnesota bonsai function the other day, and one of my friends from the club, Dale, he was talking about how some of his trees are so big, and he leaves stuff on for sacrificial stuff, that he might take some wire or some maybe even just rope, I guess, or string, And he might tie the tree all together like this and put it in the cold frame, so he saves all that space, right? So you wouldn't have to cut it all down. You could always bunch it up. And that's almost like wiring this thing to try to keep the shape that way already. But I'm going to go ahead and just give this a little bit of late summer prune. We're not even close to fall yet. It's still August. And we're going to cut these off. So back and back and back. Those were going straight back. This one's going at a really weird angle and really close to where this corner is. So I could bend it over that way, but it would just look very, very odd, I think. And then this is growing back as well. So I'm going to cut that shorter and that shorter. And we'll decide in the new position if that's going to stay and maybe grow some more branches this way and out that back. This one's also growing back, but it could be bent over this way, so we won't cut it completely off. We'll just shorten it up right now. And again, wire or the repositioning will determine that. And this guy right here is a nice branch that has some nice movement. It's coming up here. We're just going to go ahead and shorten that one again, just to bring it shorter, and we'll see what happens when we repot next year. So that's all the stuff going, oh, not this one, straight back. We got most of that in check. Now, look at this branch. This branch will be a lovely branch. It comes up here, kind of comes up like this, back around this way, and now coming back this way. We put a little wire on this guy. This can be fun next year. And so I can wire it out to here, right? So we can cut that off to right there. And of course I could take these as cuttings. We'll shorten this one up as well to where we had 5, right here and here. This can be windswept next season. If we go ahead and change the angle, we'll see how this is all going to look. I'm going to shorten this one just a bit. And then all of these right here, can I just shorten them a little bit? Let's go to a leaf that's facing the windswept direction. This one as well. This one as well. Down here. All these going that direction already. We're just making it shorter so it's going to fit in cold frames and prepare it for next year's repotting, repositioning possibly in the pot to make it a little bit more higher of a tree, a little less low to the ground. Now this is, she's done such amazing work with this, and I love this slab, but we lose this whole part of the slab, and I think it's touching the ground a little bit too much, and I just want to raise it up. You know, I want to bring it up a little bit, right? And if it's just a couple of inches, that could make a huge difference in this tree. Now this right here, again, if we go this way, this could be even a good branch. So I'm not going to cut them both off. I'm just going to shorten them both and leave them for the future. But this one, well, this also could be a good branch going this way if we go like this and go like that. This one I can shorten up a little bit more here. This one I can shorten to there, and that one I can shorten to there. And again, will that go and continue in its natural path out there? More than likely it will. We'll cut this one a little bit shorter, cut this one a little bit shorter. I'm going to cut this upper bifurcation, trifurcation off, and then I'm cutting all this off as well. A lot of energy up there. So now we have a tree that's ready to go into cold storage, a little bit better, and still everything is pretty windswept except for this is getting a little straight up, and this right here is getting a little straight up, but we have this branch here that's already coming this way. So look at that. That's going this way. It's not much of a stretch of imagination to wire this and go like that. So I might put a little wire on these trees, give them some undulation left to right, because look at how straight that is. There's a little curve in there. We go a little bit from left to right, back to left slightly, but it's so subtle. Over time, that will straighten out more than bend more. So we'll get that going as well. So I think I can cut this one off as well, because this one's going that way. This is coming back. Let's just cut that off. I don't know that I have to do a whole bunch more to this. Oh, this one's going way back. Let's just cut that off. So we have this kind of pad right here. We have this section up here. We have back here and a couple down here that we will manipulate for next year's growth. And I'll want to come in here and do this before the push because, one, I'm going to repot it before the new push of growth. And I'm also going to wire it a little bit for the new push of growth. So when it starts to grow, it's going to hold its shape. But then remember, on a fast-growing tree like an elm, if you leave that wire on too long, you're going to have wire scars. On pines, junipers, and such, not as big of a deal. But on our deciduous trees, that's going to be a little bit more unsightly. So we got some wonderful undulations in here. She did such a fun, amazing job with her work. And you know what? Short and sweet is the answer today. I don't want to go too crazy, and here's why. I want to raise it a little bit off the slab, like about that. And so again, I don't want to uproot it now, but we're going to bring this all up. And rather than bring it up with wire and sandwich all these branches together, we're going to go ahead and raise it up and then maybe even push it down again a little bit, but we're going to raise it up just a little bit. We'll see how the root structure looks and how we can get that going. Now this has a couple of critters that have been around it. There's a couple of exposed roots that have kind of dried off. So when we replant this, we'll get this a little bit more tucked into the tree as well, into the pot as well. So there you have the windswept Chinese elm. Looking fantastic. Can't wait to reset this next spring. Short and sweet. The Chinese elm, windswept and all, is ready to go into the cold frame. A little more space for other trees, and we'll repot that up on the slab next spring and maybe do some wiring to keep that windswept design going strong. Now, because it was so short and sweet, I thought I would do an update for you, and this is because of a recommendation from a viewer out there, one of you all. So I met Scott out at the New England Bonsai Garden, and all kinds of trees there. I did pick up a little dwarf Hinoki cypress there. I showed that one of my previous videos on the Home Sweet Home video. That's going to come up later, his episode. I'm working on all kinds of episodes from the road trip. More to come. More great stuff to come. But he said he would love an update on my landscape challenge. Well, since this bonsai trip took me to one of my favorite places to go, Steve, from Steve's Backyard Bonsai, I couldn't wait to be right there and holding on and looking at his amazing Central Park themed landscape piece of artwork. And it's art. This is living art, and wow, amazing. Mine, alas, nowhere near his. So let's show you a picture of my landscape when I finished it. I was pretty excited. I got that country scene where you're driving down the road in your station wagon pulling an RV, and you go by and look to the left, there's that big majestic oak in the field and hay bales rolled up from the farmer, and the row of trees kind of as a wind swept, or a wind guard, I guess, a wind fence at the start of a property, very common in Minnesota and across the country. That was my inspiration, and it was in the long way of the pot, not the wide way, was the best view. In the perspective, Scott said, yeah, I just don't know if I could see it. I'm really curious what it's going to happen to it. Well, the landscape challenge for me, well, it's seen better days. Are you ready for the reveal? All right, let's reveal it for you. Be right back. Well, here we have it, everyone. Wah, wah, wah. Now, what's funny is this was a road where the station wagon and RV was, and look at this lush moss. So I get to keep that for other plantings. So what a new way to grow moss, huh? It turns out that the superfines of Akadama can produce some really good moss. How about an experiment there, Steve? We turn this around. Look at all the... Now, I put a little bit of moss in here, I will say, in this front part. But this carpet of moss is fabulous. And of course, look at all the weeds. So let's bring it back over to the side view. Yeah, wah, wah, wah is true. All these trees survived. Most of the back forest survived. A couple of scraggly ones in here. But if you recall, I might have updated you a while back. The tree in the middle that was supposed to represent the oak tree was a boxwood that just didn't go. So this mound, which is supposed to be a hill with the boxwood up here, that you see through these trees. And the hay bales, I took all off because they were getting... oh, here's a little crusty hay bale right there. Yeah, that's going in the trash. We'll have to buy new ones. HO scale. Yeah, so the reason why I wanted to show this, and Scott reminded me of this, thank you, Scott, that, you know, bonsai isn't always finished and we're done with it, right? They say a finished bonsai is dead. And it's work in progress, and it's living art, and it continually changes, and we have to work on these landscapes. They're very hard to do, easy to start relatively, but then you have to maintain them. And I did not maintain this very well. But I've got this fun moss scene going on, so it's a completely different landscape. But of course, now it doesn't make much sense. And so if we go this way, what is the story going to tell? Will I recreate this and continue to work on it and see? Well, here's what I'll do today. We're going to trim it up today as an update and work session, and then we'll see what happens next year and how I want to work this. Right off the get-go, I see this really long branch coming from this inner forest tree. I got to get rid of that. That's just obnoxious. But let's work on these trees first. Now, oh, here's another one coming in from way in there. Super big. So to look inside the forest, okay, we got to do some more weed picking here. In order to see the tree in the future someday, oh, another hay bale. Oh, that's a plastic one, so that maintains its shape. We can hold on to that one maybe. I've got this twin thing going on here, and we might have to reposition these someday. They're kind of crossing each other in a weird way. But we're going to go ahead and cut these up, right? This is a quaking aspen, and these are all just going to get shorter. Just like I would trim my other trees at the end of the year to promote some more back budding and see where things are going to go. I'm going to take this branch completely off right now because it's interfering with the other tree. So we've got this kind of Y up here, but I hope by cutting this and next year when the energy is super strong, I will fertilize this. Maybe we'll get some back budding down lower. Now that said, I don't want too much back budding because I want from the front angle to be able to see that tree in the background should we get a tree in there in the future. So I cut it back, and now we can see these two trees at least take shape. And even if I have to cut this off someday and just make two tall, skinny trees with all the foliage up here, I can do that. But I'll leave that for right now. This one's coming over here and kind of stealing the view. So let's go ahead and cut that off right off now. This tree is pretty healthy, robust, and it's leaning up towards the front of the tree, which works for this angle, not so much of the front angle. But we'll go ahead and cut off this chunk right here, all that tip, and now we have these branches down here and these in here. We'll see where these buds, there's a bud there, buds there, buds there. We'll see what happens. And then this big tree doing super nice. We'll cut back some of the top of this tree to promote some new buds and new branches next year. Next spring, we'll kind of trim some of these and pick and choose what we want to keep. So that's got a little ramification up at the top of this tree. Nothing for the first, scale-wise, this is nothing for the first, 40, 50 feet of a tree. So it's old and we don't have no lower branches. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for a solo tree. But as a forest gets bigger and we have leaves up here, it won't look maybe as obnoxious. But maybe we'll get a couple more back buds down here and we'll keep one of those. So we have a pretty strong tree up here that we're just keeping a little bit shorter up here. I'm going to go actually one further back here, and we'll leave that one right there. So now you can see through the forest again because I've cleaned it up, and we'll see what happens next year with growth. Now these trees over here I thought were all dead, but lo and behold, especially with Zelkovas, the Japanese elms, they look like they're dead, and you leave them alone and forget about them. You come back and like, oh my gosh, it's still alive. So we've got all this little growth on here. This tree is still definitely alive and kicking. So we're just going to cut that one off here. I'm actually going to cut this off too because it's the thicker of the two. And let's get that off of here. There we go. And then we have a branch over here and a branch over here. We got a nice little tree right there. Same up here, some nice ramification up here at the very tippy top, 3 different branches up there and one down lower. And this little guy had a couple of these sprigs that I've been cutting off while I was talking just to shorten things up, and we'll let that continue to shoot out for next year. So just cutting things down so it's nice and small. So there's a couple of tea bags, and there's those 3 trees right there. So those are fine. They should be the tall trees, so they're going to have some catching up to do, but we can go ahead and we can manipulate these trees here and shorten them up so they don't look so out of place. And we'll let all of them take off next year. So let's go over to this side of the forest. This is actually supposed to be a little bit downhill as we get to the back of the tree forest of trees because they were smaller and supposed to give you perspective. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to see, oh look at this. I've got a new tree right there. Is that a Chinese elm? It looks just like the trees here. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to leave it there, cut these bottom branches off, and that might be a weed or it might be a Chinese elm. The leaf structure looks identical. Who'd have thunk? I don't know how that could have happened, so maybe I'm wrong. But we'll just leave it there for now. So as I see this, I can take off some of these real big ones real quick for you so we don't spend too much time on structure of the trees, but we want it to go downhill. So look at how big this branch is on this tree right here. That's a little obnoxious. Now we have a branch behind it, so we're going to go ahead and cut that whole branch off. And now that's shortened that thing way up. We shorten that one way up, and we shorten that, and we shorten that, and now we have a little bit of our smaller forest. So already, just with a couple little clips, we have a forest that's slowly but surely getting back to where I wanted it to be, as far as getting smaller and smaller as it goes, in this case, from the west to the east, as we head, or from the east to the west as we head up north to the cabin going this way. So we have some branches that are kind of coming out at us. So now we can kind of come in here and thin some of this stuff out. I don't want to branch that low on that forest tree, over there. So we're going to clean out some of these lower ones now, so we can actually see that there is kind of a forest back there with trees. This one's coming out at us too much. Let's just cut that off. This one's coming out at us too. We'll cut that down shorter. And this is kind of right now, this year, I'm just going to kind of almost hedge prune this unless I see really, really for sure branches that I want to be off of there, just to shorten things up and promote a new season of growth next year. But again, if you go into every little tree and you directional prune, tell it to grow to the right or to the left, you're going to be in control. Now see, this is coming from way over here. I don't want any of that. I don't want any of that length. We're going to cut that right off. So we have some gaps in our forest, and that's totally fine as well. Forests aren't completely in one, solid looking structure. All right, let's turn this to the back to see some of the back trees back here. I don't need this one shooting out past the pot too much. This one either. That can grow up and up. So again, a little bit more of Nigel Saunders blue scissors treatment, which I don't have myself a blue scissors yet, but this is as close as I get. And this branch is coming way in from that tree. Again, shorten these up on this side of the forest because that's the perspective that we have with this idea that I had of a forest. When you're driving up to the cabin and you're seeing it get less and less further away, the trees get a little bit smaller. And of course, in reality, they don't. They're all the same size relatively. So a little bit of moss in there as well. So we have our forest down there. It goes from relatively tall to short. We're of course missing this because this died off, but it came back to life, so we'll let that shoot up. I can go ahead and even cut this a little bit shorter. Why not? Why not? I can do a lot. These things grow so ferociously that we'll get plenty of growth next year, so I'm not going to worry about it. We'll just make it a little bit more tidy here. And there we go. So relatively tall to shorter here, and we'll get this thing in strong shape next year. And we'll consider a tree for the big oak tree in the middle of the barren field now. There's no more hay. I'm not going to make the hay restructure that I did here. I had all that hay coming up. That's long gone and fallen off and weathered and just did not weather very good. But of course, it's just raffia that I used, and it was real soft and got a lot of acorn shucks in here or something. I think the squirrels have loved this planting. So there you have it, a little update for you, a little bit of work today on my landscape challenge that is supposed to be looked at like this. So there we have the landscape challenge. Again, driving north, east over here, west over there. We have these big trees up here, hopefully a big old oak tree that represents a big old tree out in the field that they didn't plow over years ago. And we have this forest of elm trees. So we'll put this back on the bench. We'll leave it go for the rest of this year. And who knows what we can turn this into next year. Can we salvage it? Oh, of course we can if we put our mind to it. I was almost thinking I was just going to trash it. But here's the thing about bonsai too. We've talked about before how you can love a tree to death or love some material to death because you don't have enough trees. I let this thing go untouched almost the entire summer. I think the entire summer. So all this moss grew and the trees went crazy. Sometimes you just got to leave your trees alone and let them grow. So we'll put this back on the benches and we'll see what happens for next year. Put the scissors down, Dave. Can't tell you how many times I keep hearing that. Put it down. Hey, thanks for joining me in the PSGF. The tree cutters have still not come down, so I'm glad I started a video when I did. And until the next one, including all the road trip videos that are on the way, hey, take care of you, take care of your bonsai, and you know, we're going to see you on the next one.